Hey, welcome back to the library. Super Mario Duck Hunt World Class Track Meet. Captain America and the Avengers. Super Mario World. Burnout Revenge. You always remember your first game for a console, regardless if it was the pack-in or of your own choosing. With multiple anniversaries happening in the next 4 months for the PlayStation universe, I thought it would be a great time to wax poetic about my first PlayStation game, Street Fighter Alpha Warrior's Dreams. The PlayStation was a curious system to me at its release. I was blessed to see it in action at a monthly anime club. I was impressed by Ridge Racer and more. But as the launch window arrived closer and closer to the American debut, there weren't any games I had to have. It was an odd feeling being part of the hype, but not being in line for it. Sure, Street Fighter the movie and Ridge Racer would have tied me over, but they didn't feel special. They didn't feel like they were the Jason-type game I needed to bond with the system truly. Boy, was I wrong about Ridge Racer. Until a GameFan article arrived comparing Capcom's Street Fighter Alpha arcade version to the PlayStation version. It was love at first sight. Before we get to the console version, though, we need to discuss the arcade game and why it was such a big deal for me, and for everyone else at the time. I was leaving video games behind when the PlayStation was arriving on the scene. I laughed off the 3DO and the Atari Jaguar era, so my only real frame of reference was my Super Nintendo. I had played far too many hours of the various Street Fighter II iterations on it, especially SF2 Turbo. For me, the graphics were always not arcade quality, technically realistic looking, and most importantly, de facto visuals. After years of that and Mortal Kombat 2, I expected what a Street Fighter should look like. And then Alpha took my breath away. I can't remember the exact location we went to searching for the arcade's original release, but I vividly remember gasping at how bright and vivid it was. The Japanese anime art style popped off the screen without the need for 3D glasses. Fireballs were the brightest of blues. Super shadows danced behind their owners in a sea of monochromatic hues, and the characters were huge. Sagat looked like a monolith compared to the standard characters. Bison took on a whole new vibe, as if you're modeled after Marvel's Kingpin. Thanks to it being a bridge between the original Street Fighter 1 and 2, characters from both series found their way into the title along with Sodom and Guy from Final Fight. New characters Charlie, Rose, and Dan, a parody of Art of Fighting's Rio and Robert, rounded out the lineup. Alpha was like a homecoming for all the great things we love about this series 2 decades later. It brought in the chain combos concept from Darkstalkers. It introduced the sneaky, yet insanely satisfying alpha counters where you spun the opponent off balance from their initial assault. It was particularly ego-inflating to pull it off versus an M. Bison Psycho Crusher. Finally, 3 levels of Super Meter with the ability to change the strength of the Super depending on how many buttons were pressed. It was a sight to behold in the arcade, which returns us to the PlayStation version. I had saved enough money to score myself a system with the purple PlayStation Pix demo disc, a single memory card, and a copy of Street Fighter Alpha. I was so hyped for the home release that I had spent a week rereading every magazine article I could find. I laid out all the 2-page spreads and just soaked in the comparison shots. It looked utterly fantastic. I arrived at the mall on that fateful Tuesday and walked into Gamer's Paradise to snag them all, only to find the friend I promised the sale to hadn't gotten to his shift yet. I just couldn't wait. I told the manager on duty what I needed, and he confessed they didn't have Alpha. Confused, I still bought the system and the memory card. Scouting other gaming-related stores in the mall provided the same results. It was nowhere to be found. On the way home, I stopped by a Best Buy to make one last-ditch effort, only to realize the problem. I was a week early. I went home. Instead of basking in the glory of Street Fighter, I basked in the glorious demo disc. I must have played the Wipeout demo 100 times and watched all the video promos multiple times over. Regretfully, when the proper day came, I had college and my night shift to get to. The mall was on the way, but it would be extremely close since I had a uniform change that was required. Arriving from campus, the car was parked. I ran to the mall center where Electronics Boutique was waiting. I asked if they had it, only to watch them pulling the game out from the shipments container. I gleefully handed over my $60, got the $4 and change back with the game, and then raced my ass home. By the time I was fully dressed in my uniform, crossed with the game's loading times, I was able to play a single 2-round fight. It was the best 2 rounds of my life, and then I turned it off and raced my ass to work. It was all I could think about for that 5-hour shift. Sweeping floors? Nope, I was thinking about sweep distances. Bagging groceries? Nope, I was mapping out combo chains. Taking out the garbage was just practicing fireball motions. By the time I got home, all I cared about was getting through the game at least once. I ended up going to bed around midnight just to wake up super early for my college class the next day. Going back to it for this video, as well as programmer's cheats and the like, made me 20 years old again. It was like no time had passed. Even now, whether it's on the Poly Mega or my still working CRT TV, Street Fighter Alpha shines like a beacon in the night. The gameplay is slower on the standard setting, returning it to the original Street Fighter 2 heyday. Turbo options let you speed things up, with the usual Capcom tweaks and adjustments, just the way you like it. One of the sticky points in its original release time was how minimal the backgrounds were. Most stages were empty. Well, streets. Capcom also recycled them by changing up who and what was in the stages. While Ken's version had only the audience of a young DJ, returning to that stage to fight Charlie, you saw a huge crowd, reminiscent of Balrog stage in SF2. You even had a nice little cameo of Cody and Jessica from Final Fight. Sodom and M. Bison's railway station pays a nice updated tribute to Street Fighter 1's rail yard area, with real-world subtle references to ground it. Movie buffs even get the gleeful tribute to Bruce Lee's Way of the Dragon fight in the Coliseum, complete with kitty cats. Even with the super arts, the anime look, and the upbeat soundtrack, there's something about Alpha that just makes it feel raw. When Street Fighter Alpha 2 came to market, it was clear that Capcom listened a little too hard about Alpha 1's criticisms, particularly the backgrounds. Alpha 2's are practically circus events with flying debris, bright shiny colors, and more cameos than paid web services. Modern fighters have turned super moves into cinematic productions. Worse still is the opposite take like Mortal Kombat, who traded hilarious, giggle-inducing multi-limb body explosions for ultra-violent, sometimes questionably realistic fatalities. None of that is to be found here in Alpha. It was fighting in a new form that boiled down to its purest form. 28 years later, I may not be able to hang on the 8 stars anymore because LOL carpal tunnel arthritis, but I still find myself in a blissful state anytime I go back to it, which is what a first game you play in a system should do. As we move towards the future, it's important to treasure the little things about that first game, those first impressions, the feel of discovering the most obscure secrets buried within them. It doesn't matter if that's through natural gameplay, reading a guide on it, or just snooping around with the Game Shark Pro in the old days. Finding that first joy that can never be extinguished isn't just a rite of passage in playing video games, it's an astronomically healthy beginning to a system's new life. Everyone remembers their first game on a system, for better or worse. You tell me your top 3 first games with their respective systems in the comments section below, and let's get this conversation started. We're just 2 games shy of the Living History Project's final run, and October cannot get here fast enough. Stay safe, you guys. I'm here when you need me. See you in the comments section.